Hey everyone, this is Louis7, and in this video I want to explore why the legendary servers were so fun in the Lord of the Rings Online. And of course these legendary servers of Anor and Ithil still do exist today, just a little over 2 years after they were launched, and they have been slowly progressing through previous eras of LOTRO. But for this video I am going to be focusing on the past tense were fun, I think mainly with their launch and Shadows of Angmar through Mirkwood, but I even think they were still quite enjoyable up until the release of Helm's Deep actually just a few months ago. And just to give some reference, I still do play on Anor, but honestly, I only play there because of the great kinship I'm on that server to play with those people. It's the Mythal League for anybody unfamiliar. And I also do want to point out that I plan to follow this video up at some point in the future exploring what went wrong with the legendary servers, because there were some issues even though they were so immensely fun. But moving on, one of the things that contributed to my enjoyment in the first days of the servers was the extreme amount of excitement built up before the launch. This was the time period quite a bit after Mordor and after the start of update 23, which raised the level cap to 120. I was playing catch up with some of my characters and really overwhelmed by endgame and the grind to get to endgame, especially as somebody who likes to play a bunch of alts. So I was just adventuring through the new zones, which I was mostly enjoying, but what was odd is I was more excited for the legendary servers than I was to go through the newly released content in the game at the time. And the legendary servers were a hot topic for LOTRO, and I made a few videos surrounding them, and I just generally felt a lot of hype from the broad LOTRO community. I also reconnected with some old players that I used to play with back in my early days of LOTRO, particularly with a few people from a kinship. I ran mostly like Rise of Isengard endgame content with, among other things. And I don't think this was a unique experience for me. I heard from actually a number of people they were able to reconnect with, maybe people they used to play with that left the game, and those people might have been coming back to actually check out these servers. So that was just all really nice, and I gotta say I was perhaps the most excited I had been for anything gaming-wise in a couple of years at the time. And then we had the servers actually launch, and I loved my early time on them. So I have and had run a lot of low-level content in LOTRO before the launch, but I was actually in a period where I hadn't run through all the low-level zones in Quest 2 recently, especially on certain classes. So it's like a semi-fresh experience in a way, even though it was all stuff I definitely did before. In fact, I was actually having so much fun that I unintentionally did some of my longest streams ever on my channel, with a 6-hour stream the first day, then a 7-hour stream the next. And I kept up with these longer and way more frequent play sessions and streams because I was just enjoying that time so much. But why was that early experience so fun and thrilling, just leveling new characters in LOTRO, given that it was nothing new? Well, I think there are a few key reasons. The first is that there were tons of people on the Anor server that I and all my kinmates and Fringe joined. The place was crowded and booming with life. Everywhere I went, I would see somebody doing their thing, and that was just really satisfying and fun to see so many people enjoying their time in LOTRO and freshly progressing on the server. The second reason plays off of that, and it's all the players. The relatively huge population was all concentrated at the low levels. Having the server limited to level 50 made sure everybody on the server was nearby each other. So again, I would see tons of people I was just leveling, adventuring on the server because that was all we had to do early on. And that brings us to the third reason, which is that it was a fresh start experience. So yes, my gold and all my valuables from Arkenstone, the other main server I played on, all that was gone here, but it was also gone for everybody else. We all started on an even playing field, and it gave the entire community a fresh start, but importantly, a fresh start together. And for me, it was like a giant feeling of relief. This also once again meant the huge and hugely concentrated population were working together with each other from again that same beginning. In short, it was just like a lively MMORPG world at the start. Moving on to the fourth reason was the kinship, the Mythal League that I mentioned earlier. For me, being in an active, casual, and social kinship for the first time in a few years in the game was just a great experience for myself. And again, I think this is something a lot of players were able to get similar experiences on from what I've heard. And then moving on, the fifth reason is with the actual gameplay. It was honestly just super fun to make a character of every class and start progressing on them, fueling my altaholic tendencies while still furthering progressing with my main character, which was Louis, who I did the Anor LM livestream series on. So that is all why the early days of the legendary servers were fun to me, and by early days this is before I got to the level 50 cap at the time. This was really all my initial experience in the first couple weeks or like month or so on the server, and I honestly don't know what else to say but that it was just like awesome, and that awesome experience continued on as I got to the level cap on my first character and my kin started running some more group content. So now we did run tons of group content while leveling, and as I mention on my channel frequently, I love low-level group content in LOTRO. I think it is one of the most fun things in the game, so of course that was a big contribution to why the legendary servers were so fun to me. The ability to easily form a group because of the large concentrated population for like various scaling instances was really great, and just a stark contrast to the difficulty of getting an on-level group together for like a random Great Barrow or like some level 40 instance or just something like that on the regular non-legendary servers. So this also helped like satisfy my desire to run that type of on-level scaling group content in LOTRO. But now let's actually move on to some of the more long-term things that kept me playing on the legendary server after I got to endgame and after the initial thrill and rush from the early days. So the first thing here for me was actually it was my first time fully running a lot of the Angmar instances, which are not scaling, and it was definitely the first time for me to get properly running them on level. I thought those instances were fun to go through, and just like a lot of the other low-level group instances that I was more familiar with. This was also the first time I properly ran through endgame content with a dedicated kinship since Rise of Isengard, again a few years before the launch of the server, so it was nice to get back to that. The raid, the Rift of Nerves Gashu, was also very fun to me, and even my kin to progress through and try the higher difficulty tiers with like our very casual and subjectively more fun, unoptimized setup. But the second thing, which was perhaps the biggest reason, is there was none of the insane grind that LOTRO has on the regular servers to gate me and other players from just like jumping into group content or Shadows of Angmar endgame. For me, as you may have seen in some of my recent content, LOTRO endgame just wears me out because of that. It was so nice to not have these barriers and limitations hold back the actually amazing content unlike the regular servers. This crazy grindiness, honestly, is the biggest thing that keeps me from having even more LOTRO content on my channel and basically praising the game more. But moving on to the third thing I loved about the legendary servers is there was no monetization mess. Of course, the LOTRO store was a thing, but with the level 50 cap and content, there wasn't as much pay-to-win type stuff. But the big thing with the regular servers is they have quest packs, expansion quests, VIP subscription that covers some of that stuff, and even some expansion bundles and quest bundles which contain some of that stuff but not all the stuff, and just all sorts of confusing and intimidating things for people who want to spend money on the game. But with the legendary servers with Shadows of Angmar, it was very simple. You had to be a VIP subscriber to play on the server, but with that, you got 100% all the content on the server. There was no need for any additional expansions or expenses, and while I owned all the expansion, that was still a very nice thing and a great thing for other players who did not, and overall one of the things that made the legendary server so fun to me. The fourth major thing for me was the gameplay and ability to enjoy my time re-exploring all the classes at low level and get them like running group content again without the grinding barriers in mind. But disregarding that, I had a ton of fun running just like Great Barrows, Fornosts, Garthic Arwins, and the such on all the classes and getting the unique experience with those, playing all the different roles. And for my higher level characters, I also got to run the endgame group content on a variety of roles and from a variety of perspectives, which was super fun and something I had not been able to do since the level 105 cap on the regular servers before that. And finally, the last thing here at this point that made the legendary server so fun was once again my kinship, so just an additional shout out to them. So that was my experience for the Shadows of Angmar on the legendary servers. Overall, it was a lively MMORPG experience with a very concentrated and relatively large population and a very wonderful community of players that made the already fun content and made it have an even more special and amazingly fun feel to it. Right as I was enjoying that time so much, we got some bad news for the servers, which was something I was very worried about from the announcement info, and that was just 4 months after their launch, we were already getting Mines of Moria added. So my biggest criticism of the legendary servers is they progressed way too fast with increasing the level cap and adding new content. And from what I saw and heard, a lot of players actually ended up getting disinterested in them because of this and like quitting the servers, going back to the regular servers, or just stopped playing LOTRO altogether because of that. But we'll set that aside for now and save it more for the next video. And going forward, I just want to highlight some of the few fun things that were after the glory days of Shadows of Angmar on the legendary servers, kind of moving to Moria or Mirkwood now. So the first thing here was I also went through a lot of the Moria instances for the first time, and once again with a proper on-level group. Just as it was with Shadows of Angmar, that was all fun content and fun to repeat content for me. Also at the time, I was able to level more alts and get more zone playthroughs going, and importantly, the population. Even with the level 60 cap and most players being at that cap, it was still concentrated enough that you could randomly run like low-level group content with an on-level group fairly easily, so that was also nice to see still going. Next up, I was able to do some Moria zones that I hadn't touched since the questing revamp, which was, for me personally, very fun to go through because I disliked Moria a lot less that time through. And really, a lot of the things that I talked about from the early days in Shadows of Angmar in-game content were still true overall, but these things I just mentioned were just some extra short highlights again from what after that made the legendary server still so fun in that past. So, even though this video has focused on the past with the legendary servers and my experience specifically on Anor, I want to reiterate that I still play there with my kinship, even if it has gone into content I don't enjoy as much, and that I am still excited for their future, especially maybe as we get to like the Throne of Dreadterror raid from update 18, if I remember correctly, and afterwards with that, so I can experience all that more fully with like a proper on-level group. But that is all I have today. I hope you all enjoyed me reminiscing about my time on the legendary servers and sharing why they were so fun to me. And I actually do believe the topics covered in this video showcase some issues I have with LOTRO and how things could be potentially improved upon in the future to make all the funness of these servers a bit more universal to regular endgame in LOTRO and just LOTRO in general. But if you all have any thoughts on the legendary servers and whether you found them fun or not, please do share below in the comments. And anyway, if you did enjoy this video or found something useful from it, please consider liking and subscribing for more, or becoming a channel member to support the content, and thanks for watching everyone.